Have you been applying to design job after design job, but you can't get so much as a call back? You may not realize this, but you only have 7.4 seconds to prove your value to a hiring manager before they close your resume and move on to the next candidate. As an art director, I've reviewed thousands of resumes over the years, and I see the same common mistakes again and again that get your resume thrown in the no pile.
No! God, please, no! No!
If you want to create the perfect graphic design resume that gets you more callbacks, more interviews, then you're in the right place. You're going to want to stick around to the end of this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so the topic I see talked about most when it comes to graphic design resumes is the design itself. Obviously, as designers, we want to show off our creative skill set, show what we can do, make a really flashy resume that stands out and it looks great with tons of graphics and images and icons, right? Wrong. While it's tempting to show off those design skills in your resume, those flashy graphics are better left for your portfolio. The goal of your resume is to portray information, to be legible, to be skimmable, to be easily read. So all those graphics and images can actually detract from that. I mean, think about it. At this stage, the hiring manager isn't even thinking about your design skills yet. They want to make sure that you have the experience, that you have the skill set, that you're able to check all those boxes from the job description. That's not to say that your resume should be built using a default Microsoft Word template or something like that, but rather that it should be focused on strong design fundamentals like typography, hierarchy, layout, and grid. You should think of your resume as a great place to showcase your restraint. So show that you can create something that's visually very interesting and solid without needing all of the embellishments and graphics. This has been proven in multiple studies where they show that resumes that are easy to read, they're skimmable and scannable, perform much better and have higher viewing times than those that are more cluttered or have a lot of embellishments. So yes, that means no skill pie charts, no headshots, and please, please, no program mastery sliders. On top of performing better with hiring managers, simplifying your resume will also achieve better results with automated ATS scans. If you haven't heard of ATS before, it stands for Applicant Tracking System, and it's basically a tool that HR departments use to weed out unqualified candidates and rate the most qualified candidates. With a lot of design jobs, especially remote design jobs, getting hundreds if not thousands of applicants these days, ATS scans become more and more common as HR departments are looking for ways to sift through that initial batch. The problem that ATS software can present is that it's an AI tool, so it's not perfect. So if your resume is too complex, if it has a non-standard layout or using too many graphics, this can confuse the system and it won't be able to parse the information properly. So then the question becomes, how do you make sure your resume is being scanned properly by these tools? You might not be getting that feedback from those HR departments, right? Well, luckily there's both free and paid online tools that allow you to upload your resume, get an ATS scan, and see what kinds of grading you're getting, as well as getting feedback on what can be improved. There's a lot of options out there, but the two I recommend are resumeworded.com and enhancedcv.com. No two ATS systems are the same, so I highly recommend uploading your resume into multiple tools online and seeing the different feedback you might be getting from each. Once you get that feedback, you can take it to update your resume, re-upload it into the system, and make sure that you're heading in the right direction. Okay, now that we've talked about the design of your resume, let's start talking about content. Off the bat, one of the most common things I see left off of resumes that's a real head scratcher is a header section. So right at the top of your resume, you should have your name, your desired job title, your phone number, your email address, your portfolio link, and optionally your LinkedIn page if you think that adds value. This should all be, again, right at the top, really easy to find, very easy to read. This is just kind of the baseline, most important information on your resume, so you definitely want to make sure that it's visible. I cannot tell you how many times I've looked at a resume and had to search all over it trying to find the resume link or someone's email address. It's really frustrating and it's a time waster, so just make it easy on the hiring managers. Another quick tip is to make your portfolio link an actual clickable link. A lot of the times it's just text, which makes the hiring manager have to copy it, paste it into their browser. It's just adding a little bit of friction to the process, so just make it easy, make it a link. One of your goals with your resume is to leave a great first impression, and one of the best ways to do that is to show that you sweat the small stuff, that you've thought through the tiny details. So just spend that little bit of extra time making sure that the UX is locked in. So now we have a professional header right at the top of our resume. Under that is actually an optional section, but something I think makes a big impact, and that's a summary section. Since we know that hiring managers only spend a few seconds on each resume, a professional summary is a great way to have an elevator pitch and to show them exactly why you're a great fit for their company. So how do we write a summary section that gets results? First, we want to make sure that we keep it brief, so only about 3 to 4 sentences. Second, we want to highlight key career accomplishments accompanied by key metrics and tangible results whenever possible. Third, we want to make it obvious that we have experience doing this type of work and that we'd be a great fit for this role. And finally, we want to write using keywords from the job description in that copy whenever possible. Don't force it, make sure it still reads organically, but it's a great way for hiring managers to check those boxes as well as ATS scans to pick up on those keywords. Basically, our goal here is to have the hiring manager read our summary section and say, wow, this person is a great fit for this role. They have experience doing this and they have a proven track record of success. The next area we'll talk about makes up the bulk of your resume, the experience section. So the experience section has a similar goal to the summary section where you want to make sure that you're highlighting your key accomplishments, you're showcasing metrics and tangible results, you're talking about your skill set, and you're making sure the hiring manager knows that you're a great fit for the role. The main difference here is that it's an opportunity to get more into the details, to get more granular, and to provide more context. First, let's look at what you should include in your experience section, and then we can talk about how to write it. So for each position you list in the experience section, you should include your job title, the company you worked for, and the years you worked for each role. You should list jobs in chronological order, providing more detail for recent relevant positions and less detail for old or unrelated jobs. Once you've accumulated enough experience, you can leave off old unrelated jobs altogether. If you don't have much or any work experience relating to the position you're applying to, you can include related volunteer positions, school projects, certifications, or side projects. While it may not be as impactful as relevant full-time positions, it shows you're passionate about the line of work, and it's a lot better than nothing. Okay, now we've talked about what to include. Now let's talk about how to write about your work experience. Use bullet points instead of paragraphs to keep things short and to the point. Make sure your resume is scannable. Hiring managers probably won't read everything word for word. Focus on high-level, high-impact accomplishments, providing metrics and tangible results whenever possible. Make sure you're highlighting the results, not the role. Measurable results might include increasing revenue year over year, the amount of social engagements you got on a certain campaign, or a measurable increase in asset output from your team. Be sure to use active voice and action verbs when you're writing your accomplishments. For example, instead of saying my project management skill set increased the team output efficiency, you might say launched a project management workflow that increased annual creative team deliverable output by 15%. Be sure to align accomplishments and content to the job you're applying for. For example, if you're applying to a creative leadership position, maybe you're highlighting things like revenue generation, award-winning campaigns, and increasing team output. A great tip here is to review a handful of job postings for jobs you're interested in, and take note of recurring job requirements, skills, and keywords. You can then use that research to tailor your resume content and make it a no-brainer for hiring managers to know that you're a great fit for the role. So now we have an easily scannable experience section that's to the point, it's impactful, it's relevant to the job, but there's still a few more sections you'll want to include on your resume. Before we get into that, I wanted to take a second to ask you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below. As a small content creator, every single engagement helps, so I really appreciate it. All right, back to the video. Okay, so the next section you'll want to include is a software or tools section. Basically, this is just a section where you can list all the different pieces of software and tools that you feel comfortable with, and so hiring managers can check those boxes off from the job description. As I mentioned before, there's no need to get granular about your comfort level with each program, with charts or anything like that. Just list the ones that you're comfortable with, that you can use proficiently, and leave off any that you're not too sure about. You don't want to get hired for a job only to find out a program you've only opened once that you listed on your resume is something they expect you to be an expert at.
President, vice president. How much of this stuff is real?
That's a real resume.
So for a graphic designer role, you might list things like Adobe Creative Cloud, Figma, Microsoft Office, Keynote, and Trello. The next section you'll want to include that I don't see used very often is a soft skills section. I think this is a really valuable section to include because it lets you talk about your skill set outside of just programs and tools. This is a great place for you to include some keywords that are going to be checkboxes for both the hiring manager and ATS scans. You can include things like facilitating workshops, user journey mapping, creative leadership, or marketing funnels. Next up, you'll want to include an education section that includes at minimum where you went to school, the year you graduated, and the degree you received. The importance of this section varies quite a bit depending on where you are in your career. So obviously, if you're just fresh out of college, this section will have a lot more importance. Whereas if you're more senior in your career, then this becomes a lot less important. So for those of you that are just coming out of college, you can include things like your GPA, any awards you've won, or any extracurricular activities that are relevant to the job role. For designers that are further along in your career, you don't need any of those extras, just keep it short and sweet and place this section at the very bottom of your resume because it doesn't hold a lot of weight the further you are out from graduating. Finally, the last section you might want to include is a references section. I say this section is optional because for myself at least, I don't have enough room to fit it on my resume. And also I like to give my references a heads up when they might be getting phone calls from potential employers. So I tend to have it as a separate document that I can send along when requested. In either case, you want to make sure you have 3 references ready to go. Ideally past managers, leaders, or colleagues. Always make sure to give them a heads up when you're actively applying to roles and giving out their information, so that way they can be ready to sing your praises when they get that phone call speaking to your accomplishments, your skill set, and your experience. Okay, so now you have your resume designed, you have your sections laid out, you have all of your content written. Now it's time for one of the most important steps, proofreading.
Rich, did you proofread these?
Yeah, why?
Nothing. I'm sure they'll be impressed with your excellent computer skills.
No matter how incredible your experience is or how well designed your resume is, it won't matter if it's riddled with typos or grammatical errors or spelling mistakes. Having even a few typos in your resume just makes it seem like you didn't spend a lot of time on it, or you don't care, or you just don't have a good eye for detail. And obviously, as designers, we know that having a great eye for detail is extremely important. Luckily, it's pretty easy to find typos and grammatical errors, so it's a shame that so many people seem to skip over this. The first thing you'll want to do is run your resume through a few different spell checkers, so things like Microsoft Word, Google Docs, and Grammarly. Secondly, be sure to read through the entire resume multiple times. I recommend doing this on different days even because it'll give you fresh eyes and you'll catch mistakes that you didn't see the first time around. Finally, send your resume to a few grammatically gifted friends, colleagues, and family members and ask them to do a proofreading pass. Getting a second pair of eyes to read through it is really important because they might catch grammatical errors that you didn't even know existed. We're creatives, not English majors after all. At this stage, your resume should be in great shape, so it's time to start thinking about how you're going to export and distribute the file. For most resumes, I recommend exporting as a compressed PDF. This is going to allow you to have clickable links, accurate colors, you're going to know how the layout's going to look in the final file, and it's a file type that's common that hiring managers and ATS scans can handle. One thing to pay attention to with PDFs is making sure the file size stays small. I recommend under a megabyte at most, preferably under 500 kilobytes, but you just want to make sure that it's compressed without losing quality and is easy to send in emails or upload to HRIS systems. And lastly, once you have the file exported, be sure to change the file name to first name, last name, resume. This is going to make it really easy for the hiring manager to find your file on their desktop if they happen to download a bunch of resumes at the same time. At this stage, I'm confident that you have a great resume that's impactful, it's relevant, it's skimmable, and it's going to work for both hiring managers and ATS systems. If you follow all of these steps and you're still not getting the callbacks you think you should be getting, then the problem is probably your portfolio. I've done a couple of videos where I've reviewed dozens of graphic design portfolios, highlighting best practices as well as common mistakes to avoid, so I will link those above as well as in the description below. I highly recommend checking those out if you want to build a portfolio that's designed to get you hired. Now I want to hear from you guys. Do you have any resume design tips that I didn't include in this video? If so, I'd love to hear them. Be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I really hope the tips in this video help you perfect your resume and help you land your next dream design job. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now go out there and make a ruckus.